Winterson, welcome to Booktopia.
Thank you.
We're out here in the open air. There's been a helicopter hovering over our heads for a while. There's a lot of police down the street, and world events are pretty disastrous at the moment. Do you feel as if the world has gone mad?
Yes, I do. I think we're being ruled by a bunch of psychopaths. If you think that the definition of psychopathy is that you can be charming, persuasive, and utterly ruthless and completely indifferent to the effect of your actions on other people. And when I look at the governments around the world, that's what I feel. I think we're moving further and further away from a democracy. Largely, governments don't have majorities. You don't here, we don't in England. They're so slim that they can't be said to represent all of the people. And yet they go ahead with really aggressive policies, not careful compromise policies, but as though they had a mandate from the whole nation to change the face of their country. And that doesn't feel like democracy to me.
No, I think a lot of people would agree with you.
Yeah.
So what keeps you optimistic? What do you have faith in at the moment when it's so easy to feel despair? What keeps you going?
Two things. One is that every generation comes along with new energy and is prepared to see things differently and do things differently. And we all get tired and think, well, we can't change anything. And young people think, well, this is the world they inherit. They have to change it if they want to live in it. So I think our job is to keep them both imaginative and excited and engaged so that they don't move away from politics, whatever that word means to them, so that they do feel that they have a stake in this world and that we haven't completely ruined it and closed it and sealed it off. So that's why I like to go around schools and universities and just fire people up. And part of that for me is to do it, through the agency of literature and language, and to say, expand the eye that you are. Open your imagination, know more, learn how to critique your governments, learn what politics really is, but do it from a place of feeling and passion. Don't do it from some cold place, which is just about power. And for me, literature is that place of feeling and passion.
Now, you talk about going around schools, and you've been voted one of the 10 most exciting writers to see live.
It's a worry, isn't it?
Well, it's a strange thing. I've been interviewing writers for a long, long time, and I still don't understand. Why do people want to come out and hear a writer speak? Even when there's someone as passionate and exciting as you, I'm still puzzled why the books aren't enough. Do you understand that? That need to see you?
I think it's an age-old need in people, just to be present, and especially now in a place where everything is mediated and it's all on celluloid or it's on the internet. The real experience. We see it with bands, don't we? They're not selling any albums, but everybody wants to go and see them live. They want to be in the experience, and that's translated itself to literature in a way which is distressing for a lot of writers because they're introverts and hobbits. They just want to sit in their study and never be seen in public. But the eagerness now to hear what you've got to say, I think is just as real as people reading what you've got to say. Partly also, we're losing literacy, aren't we? We're going back towards a visual culture. Literacy is actually very new. If you think about it, mass literacy doesn't happen until the middle of the 19th century. So it doesn't really surprise me that people are moving away from actually wanting to sit with a book, but still wanting to have those ideas and that engagement. And though it troubles me, I feel I have to do both. I think, right, if that's the way to get the message across, look, I was brought up in a gospel tent. However I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
Well, I was going to ask you whether you think, given your religious background particularly, that in a way writers have become the secular priests of our society, and that when something horrific happens that we cannot comprehend, sometimes it seems to me now we trust writers of fiction to tell us the truth about the real world more than we trust anyone else.
I think that's true because no one trusts politicians, and we feel that they're career politicians, that they're not in there because they want to make the world better. They're in it for themselves and their friends in the mining industries. We don't feel anymore that there's that clear vision where someone will say, I will change the world and for the better. So where do you go? You can't go to religion. Look at the mess fundamentalism is making of the world now. Who knew that in the 21st century we'd be in faith wars, seeing the whole Middle East torn apart and the West in terror of the jihad. So people have nowhere to turn, and we have to turn somewhere. It's a natural human impulse. We look towards, if not leaders, towards, gurus of some kind, somebody who's got a few answers. But of course, if you're one of the people who's being looked to, you have to be really sure that you're not doing it because it's some great ego trip. You're doing it because you really want to engage. You know, I think the temptation for things to become inflated and grandiose is real. And I'm glad this is happening to me at this point in my life. You know, I've been around 30 years now doing this. You know, I'm in my 50s. I've sort of been through it all and every possible cycle.
You've always struck me as someone who's been an early adopter of technology.
Yeah.
When other writers kind of experienced techno fear, you didn't. You really kind of leapt in there. Now that you've seen all the iterations that we have of the internet and of what you can do with your phone, are you alarmed? Are you disquieted by some things? Do you feel this kind of era of the selfie, again, things are getting out of hand?
At the moment it's terrifying because we haven't worked out how we want to control it or how we want to use it. You know, 70% of the internet is pornography. That can't be right. And yet this is an amazing tool that we could use for social democracy in a way that we just haven't seen before, bringing people together across the globe for common concern. You know, we could act as a planet. This could be the moment where globalization works, instead of simply being a way for large companies to push down wages and move their operations to avoid taxes. You know, the other side of it is we could come together as a people for the first time in history. That's the bit I see as exciting, and I think, well, the people who've grown up with this, young people, you know, they're the ones who are going to have to say, no, we'll push this forward and we'll make it into a tool for good rather than something which compromises us all.
I want to ask you about your writing, because as you say, you've been in the game, in the business, as you put it, for 30 years, and you reinvent yourself with everything that you write. You never write two books that are alike. Do you set yourself conscious, deliberate challenges? So do you say to yourself, I'm going to write an opera, I'm going to write something for children, I'm going to write a film script? Is that how you move forward? Because everything you do is so different and diverse.
I try not to refuse things that come my way. At the same time, you know, as keeping a healthy scepticism, because you can't say yes to everything. But if it's a challenge and it interests me, then I'm likely to say, okay, let's try. And that's what happened with the Daylight Game, which is my Hammer horror. You know, Hammer reinvented themselves and they made The Woman in Black and Let the Right One In. And then they wanted to revive the imprint and do horror novellas. So they said, you know, do you want to do one about the Pendle Witches, which is where I was born in Lancashire? And I thought, this is a stupid idea. And then I went home and I thought, well, look, if it goes wrong, so what? Just burn it. It doesn't matter. So, you know, you have to be prepared to, you know, to have a good spirit and to chuck the thing away and not be so, you know, again, too ego-bound or too self-conscious. You know, you can look at something and say, this is really rubbish. You know, I'm a good writer, but this is not good writing, you know, in the bin.
Do you throw a lot away anyway?
Loads.
Do you?
Yeah, my wood-burning stove. Yeah. It's very La Boheme in my study. All there is a desk and a wood-burning stove.
Right. You've been talking a bit on this trip about happiness, about what happiness is and what it isn't. And I was wondering whether you think that stories that end happily ever after are actually all that useful in preparing children for real life.
I think they need optimism and hope, kids. And, you know, and kids are predisposed to be happy. They want to be. You know, when babies are born, you know, they want to love their parents. They giggle, they laugh, they're delighted in life. You know, I think most children are born with a very good disposition. You know, we teach them how to be depressed and how to be hopeless and how to be unhappy in their various ways. So yes, I think you need to believe that the buried treasure is really there. You know, I mean, and the point of that is that you have to dig for it. It's not on the surface. You know, and you learn that fairy gold is a particular kind of currency. Sometimes it turns to dust and ashes if you don't spend it in the right way. And I think that's teaching children that there are different kinds of values and that money isn't everything. You know, that there are some things that are about the soul, a different currency. So, you know, these fairy stories really work. And, you know, there's plenty of women who've kissed plenty of frogs and they have turned into princes.
So if you were going to tell a child just one story, if there was only one story you could tell a child to equip it for life, what's the story?
What, a fairy
you would tell?
story?
Any story. Any fable, any...
A good one. The one that I really like. I mean, I like stories about the little guy and the underdog because I'm short. So Jack and the Beanstalk was always a favourite of mine because it's actually a very deep story, because there they are in poverty. Jack's going to market with the cow that he's got to sell because it's the last thing the family have, and suddenly this little elf comes along and says, "I'll give you 5 beans." What a stupid exchange is that? And that makes the beanstalk. And obviously then Jack climbs up to the place where the riches are, and he's able to get them and bring them back into his own world. But the crucial thing is you have to chop down the beanstalk, because you can't keep that bridge going all of the time. And it's a story that really says to children, look, things will help you when you need them, but no good thing is good forever. We find letting go very difficult. And that is also a story about letting go. It's about trusting, it's about recognising there are different kinds of values, different kinds of exchanges. So you exchange the cow, which is valuable in your world, for the beans, which will actually give you something that you need, which is deeper that day than simply something to eat. And then of course Jack finds all the riches that he needs in the other place. So when I read fairy stories to kids, I let them have the story first of all, and then we talk about it, so that they themselves can carry those symbols away.
Talking of kids, you've written obviously a brilliant memoir, Why Be Happy When You Can Be Normal, about your adoption and your search for your real mother. Adoption is very much in the news here at the moment, with a very unhappy example.
Yes.
This is quite a personal question.
Yes.
I wonder whether you wish now that you had at some stage adopted a child of your own, or whether you've ever had any regrets about not being a mother yourself, because it strikes me you would have been a wonderful mother.
Well, I thought about this recently, because I thought actually I would have been okay.
Yeah.
It occurred to me that because I love babies anyway. I mean, I find them endlessly entertaining, and they're always pleased to see you. Babies and dogs are great. You come through the door, and no matter how much of a failure you've been through the day, they go, "Yeah, it's you." Tails wagging, little faces going.
That's because you feed them.
Yeah, who
That's
cares?
the key.
That's no worries to me. I don't need to know the motive.
As a writer, surely
Just
you do.
That's fine. Perhaps we ask too many questions. You're pleased to see me. That's great. So I like little children too, and I've got a lot of patience with them, and I like playing games with them because I can be in that space in a very free way. And for 18 years, I have my godchildren every other weekend. They're now 18 and 14. So I was a third parent then, and was very hands-on, in that, and it meant a great deal to me. That's why I started to write the children's books. But I never felt that I could be a mother. I was very frightened of it. For a long time, utterly cut off from that emotional state. And then later, as I discovered it through the children, my own life is moving differently. But, I've reached this kind of state of grace now where I think, okay, you didn't do that, but now you could, but you probably won't because of the situations I'm in. But it's wonderful to be able to think it, and to realise that you do grow and develop in yourself, and that doesn't stop, and that some of those places that were utterly closed off to you open up again, and then you can feel sadness or questioning, even regret, but not in a way that beats you up, but in a way which adds to the process.
It sort of expands your consciousness.
I think so. And you know what? Let's say if I was male now and I had a new girlfriend who wanted a baby, I'd have one. Of course I would. There wouldn't be any question about it. But Susie's got children. I'm with somebody who's older. She's got 2 children and a grandchild. So I'm in that situation now. So you are where you are. And I think one of the ways that we beat ourselves up is that we always think that the life we don't have would be better for us than the life that we do, which is mental. People do seem to know more about the life they're not having. If I had a different job, a different house, different city, different partner, it would all be fine. But this is the life we've got, and so we work with it.
I don't know whether you've read Andrew Solomon's remarkable book, Far
I
From
have.
the
It
Tree.
is remarkable.
Extraordinary, and we talked to him here recently. He says something I think very important. He says so many profound things in the book, but one of the things that he says is, love is easy, acceptance is difficult. Do you agree?
I can understand why he's splitting the word. See, I don't think love is easy. I think it's easy to have all that top enthusiasm of love, the top line, the tune, like Puccini, all those great melodies. That we can do, and that, as I said to you, that simple delight in seeing somebody and greeting somebody, that straightforward feeling that we get is lovely, and that isn't difficult. But the ongoing business of love that's where the hard work starts. The everydayness of it, when you're not coping, when your partners or your friends aren't coping, when things are going wrong, and still you have to find a way of both being in love and loving. That's difficult.
And I think he's talking about parents and children. Is a different relationship, so it's a different dynamic.
It is a different dynamic, yeah. And I hate the way when somebody says, oh, I love you but I don't like you. It's so depressing the way parents do that, and they're always disapproving of you while saying that they love you. That's not love. Love isn't that sort of judgment. Love is sitting down and saying, well, what can we do about this, because I'm uncomfortable or you're unhappy, and finding a dialogue always. I really believe in the dialogue, and that could change everything for us, if you could really talk properly.
Now, as well as being an early adopter about technology, you've always been a writer of fiction, a literary writer who's been really excited by science. What's happening in science at the moment that you are really excited about?
What's happening in science now is actually upsetting me, because we are at a point, for instance, where we could have free energy for everybody. It's really close. Science has developed now to the point where we could leave the Industrial Revolution behind entirely. We don't need to be a dirty, polluting, destructive race anymore. In that sense, science has found the answers that people said science would find. And we could use that, but we would now be in a place where we wouldn't actually be looking at profit. And it's a mindset thing. We don't know how to get out of the idea of things being for profit. It starts right back with the Industrial Revolution. Think about when the first loom is invented, and it can do the work of 8 men. Immediately that should have been freedom, shouldn't it? That you wouldn't have to work all day, you could have had fewer hours. Instead, we make life unbearable for ourselves, and that's what's happened also with automation, isn't it? Instead of thinking, right, we don't need to work hard all the time, but there's still enough money, all we do is throw people out of work, make their lives completely meaningless and miserable, take more profits for the few. So every time we invent things that should make life more wonderful to be human, and in fact it makes things more miserable to be human. And we're at that pitch again now, where we could change the whole nature of the planet and how we understand profit, and science is making that possible. We don't need to work 7 days a week, 24/7. People could work half a week, and we could all still have a prosperous life. There is enough. This whole myth of scarcity is such a lie. So what I see science is doing is delivering the goods, but it's so disconnected from policy, and scientists are notoriously unable to say we need to take a moral position on this. They want science to somehow be neutral, which is why I have a lot of fights with scientists. And I say, look, you can't do this. Loads of your money comes from industry, so you're not neutral. And also, what are you doing about your relationship to the world when you've got so much power? Take a position. Don't hang back. And that's why I love someone like Tim Flannery, who's not afraid to stand up and say, this is the situation, it doesn't have to be like this is how we can change it. So, I'm not, I'm not anti-science, but I'd like to see some more joined-up thinking, and so that we stop being enthralled continually to the big corporations who are unaccountable and irresponsible and want business to go on as usual, which just means money, money, money. It doesn't mean, what are we doing with the planet?
Jeanette, you've got 36,000 followers on Twitter.
Yeah.
So you're obviously a fan of Twitter. Obviously people are fans of you, that goes without saying, but what do you use Twitter for?
I like the challenge of the 140 characters and seeing what I can say that's actually meaningful rather than just garbage in that space. So I don't tweet a lot. Sometimes I might go for a week or two without tweeting if I don't have anything to say. I think that's important. I don't want the thing to become an obsessive impulse. I like it because it doesn't data share. I hate Facebook. I haven't got a Facebook page and I'm not going to have one. I am not here to make billions for Mark Zuckerberg, who's just going to sell my data. And I have grave reservations about what Facebook is and what it's doing and its own policies. But Twitter is such fun. And the crazy responses that you get from people. You feel that you are connecting to a whole community. So I'm going to go on with it, but not take any notice of the people who say, why don't you tweet more? That's just too bad.
What's next for you now?
Well, I want to go home because I'm writing a book at the moment which I need to deliver by Christmas, which isn't far off. I'm involved in the Hogarth Random House Winter's Tale project, which is it's all about Shakespeare. Lots of writers are doing a different Shakespeare play and turning it into a novella. I'm doing the Winter's Tale, and it's really, my imagination is absolutely there. It's got an abandoned baby in it, so I'd love it, wouldn't I? Perfect. And it's a very mysterious play because everything happens in the gaps. Indeed, at the end, one of the main characters, Leontes, says, right, let's all go and talk about what happened in this gap of time. And the moment you read it in a sense like this gap of time, that is perfect for a novelist, because you think, I'm going to go into that gap of time and tell you what did happen. So I'm in that great inventive, creative place right now. I'm also driving myself nuts because I'm still doing the screenplay of The Daylight Gate. I'm dying for them to fire me.
And they don't. Going to.
No, every time I go to a meeting, I think this is it. They'll say, right, because they always fire writers, because you're down at the bottom of the heap, aren't you? But as yet, that hasn't happened. So I've got to finish The Daylight Gate, but really, I need to work on The Winter's Tale.
And what about The Wolves of Willoughby Chase?
Done that.
So do we see that soon?
You'll see that Christmas 2015 on the BBC. That's ready to roll. So we'll be shooting that in probably February next year. So it'll be in the can by spring. Oh, that was a great job. I loved that.
Such a pleasure to talk to you again, Jeanette Winterson. Thank you so much.
Thank you.